Most unnerving thing you've ever heard or read? My BF had a 911 call. Motor vehicle accident. When they arrived on scene, the driver was dead. A pole had gone through the window and through her chest. The unnerving part is that there were bloody marks on the pole where she had been trying to pull it out of herself while still alive. This terrifies me when I'm driving behind a vehicle with poles. I'm thinking Final Destination in my head all the way. My friend's grandma got diagnosed with cancer a few years back. They didn't find it until it was stage 4 and spread all throughout her body. I was visiting her once, before the end. She was in shock about the whole thing and said I used to be a strong woman. Between the disbelief in her voice and the look in her eyes, I will never get that moment out of my head. I read Flowers in the Attic when I was 13. I knew it was creepy back then, but now I'm rereading it and it's even creepier. I still love it though. Plot: a happy family of mom, dad, and 4 children are living happily. The father dies in a car accident on the drive home from a business trip. It's also his birthday. The family is freaking devastated. The mother writes desperate letters to her own mother, begging her to let them come stay with her. The grandmother finally says yes and the mom takes her kids there, to the huge mansion. The catch is, the grandfather disapproved of his daughter's marriage and doesn't know about the 4 children. The kids have to stay in the attic until the daughter gains back her dad's approval. A few days turn into a few months, and then years. The eldest 2 children, a boy and a girl, fall deeply in love because they're going through puberty and have nobody else. The mom stops visiting them in the attic and the boy and girl must become parents to their younger siblings. TLDR. Incest and child abuse. There was a video of a traffic stop gone bad floating around the internet in the early 2000s. I was in my early 20s and would go to various shock sites like Stille Project or Rotten.com. I used to look for material to prank my friends with. Tabgerel your desktop pic. Meet spin your homepage. Whatever. A relatively young officer, 2 or 3 years on the force, pulled over a truck, and the driver was not happy about it. The situation escalated. The driver pulled out an AR-15. The officer backs away and works himself off camera with his weapon drawn and forward. A brief gunfight ensued. The officer gets shot and returns fire but misses. He then shuffles behind his car for cover and to call for assistance. All you can see is the man with a rifle and hear the panicked voice of the officer as he radios for help. The man in the truck flanks around the other side of the vehicles, shoots, fatally, the officer several more times, gets in his truck and drives away. There is no real gore or graphic violence in the film. Everything serious happens off camera. The audio of this traffic stop is haunting, brutal, and chilling. The screams of that dying officer sometimes still wake me up at night. I wish I'd never watched that video. I heard a story on a podcast about this guy who was driving through mountains in America one night and found a car crash wreck. Being a trained medical dude, he was about to get out and check if the people lying near the wreck were alive, but something told him to drive past and then get out of his car. He drove past and looked out the back of his car, only to see people coming out of the side, out of bushes, and the people in the crash were sitting up, staring at him. I shuddered at this. Creepy as frick. When I was walking alone in the woods as a kid and heard a deer scream for the first time, thought it was some kind of demon coming after me. A mountain lion scream is one of the most soul-chilling sounds in existence. I visited the killing fields in Cambodia and have never felt more chilled and sickened in my life. The thing is, the whole area has been landscaped into a nice park, as it serves more as a memorial than a museum. So you'll be walking down a pleasant little grass path, with birds singing, a soft breeze, and leaves rustling in the wind, and then you'll suddenly trip over a piece of bone that has emerged from one of the mass graves with the last rainfall. And then you'll look around and realize that what you thought were pieces of rock and litter are actually thousands of bits of bone and old rags of clothes from the thousands of bodies just under your feet. And then you have to think that the keepers of the park collect the bits of bone and clothing they find at the end of every month. So all this stuff has just emerged recently and is a small portion of what has been and what is yet to be recovered. It really makes you realize just how many people were slaughtered. The worst bit is this really nice looking tree with some benches around it and hundreds of pretty string bracelets hanging off it, and you can sit down and rest for a while. Then you turn on the audio guide they give you at the gate, and you are told it was the tree they used to smash the heads of all the babies against, literally grabbing them by the ankles and swinging them head first against the tree, and that the dark stains on it are what remains of the blood and brains. It was horrible and I came away sickened. It was just so eerie that what looks like a really pleasant park is actually an area drenched in the death of millions. My husband explained to me in detail the hallucination he was having. He described it as a creature, totally hairless and white, crouched over and grunting at him as it scurried away and then back towards him. He said imagine the little kid from The Grudge, but totally hairless and contorted with its eyes wide open and his mouth full of crooked and broken teeth, on our back porch. He said when he made eye contact with it, it behaved like scared wild animal and it grunted and slowing backed up and then scurried through the underbrush in our backyard. He said it later came back and was looking in our windows. I cried and didn't sleep until I was so exhausted I couldn't picture it in my brain again. He stayed up for 3 days waiting for it to come back. Frick schizophrenia. He is the rake. I heard about this story that happened to a model in Japan. During a convention, a certain model was giving autographs, and this happens very often for models or idols, but apparently during these autograph sessions, many fans tend to give gifts or presents. So while the model was working, a certain fan gave her a DVD, which wasn't unusual. So later that night, she was out chilling at her friend's house with few other models and they were talking about the DVD she received. Apparently, getting DVDs as gifts wasn't uncommon for these models and the contents of these videos tended to be really sexual or pretty much the fans masturbating and such. So the model and her friends decides to watch the DVD for fun. The video was consisted of the fan from the beginning doing a really weird, creepy dance in a room. All the friends start laughing and making fun of the guy, but the model who received the DVD was in tears and crying. So one of her friends asks her what's wrong and she replies, "The room that guy is dancing in, that's my living room. And now I won't sleep, like, ever again. Hey buddy, I miss ya. You take care now. Love." That is the last thing my very close friend heard from his best friend who lives halfway around the world. The guy has been missing for 4 days now. Every time I text my husband before I drive home, I wonder if today will be the day I crash and these will be my last words. Can't grab a link of it, but it was a creepypasta regarding a guy staying at a hotel, looking through a keyhole and seeing a red eye looking back. That story scared the ever-loving crap out of me. Also the dude who goes to sleep in a log cabin, wakes up in the night to see all the pictures were malevolently glaring at him, goes back to sleep, wakes up in the morning to find no pictures, only windows. Both of those made my ass clench so hard it took a bite out of a chair. Can't find the thread now, but not long after I joined Reddit, I read a post about a cyclist who got crushed under a lorry at the traffic lights. Apparently, she had been waiting at the lights and fell over, landing under the lorry. As she's getting up, the lorry pulls away from the lights and her head goes under the wheel. The bit that really unnerved me was a comment from another Redditor who was there. He didn't see it happen, but he heard a scream and then a noise like a branch breaking from a tree. Left some pretty fricked up mental images. I remember this. The guy ran over to help thinking the sound was a leg breaking. And then he saw that her head was exploded. He posted an article. She was only like 19, I think. How about most unnerving thing I've ever seen? Was driving on the highway one night headed out to pick up some drugs. Years ago. Clean almost 5 years now, for the record. Cars started slowing down ahead of me and there was a car or two pulled off the highway. Saw some stuff that was hard to fully process and I probably don't remember it correctly, but I came to find out what happened the next day through the news. An aunt took her young niece and nephew, undressed them and walked into oncoming traffic. They all died, I believe. Not sure exactly what I saw, but it was before any ambulance had arrived and after it had happened. Pretty sure I saw upper body, separated from lower and lots of blood. I remember seeing what looked like young person's bodies without clothing. That crap fricked me up a bit at the time. Not something that would ever make sense in any remotely normal context. Really just felt like I couldn't see what was going on because my brain couldn't understand it. Break that sweet puppy's neck. I'm a fairly thick-skinned person, and not much gets to me, but dang if that audio log didn't creep me the frick out. For those who don't know, it's from BioShock. My German teacher told us a story once about how he and his friend heard that there was a village of albino people living in a forest near where he lived, so they went to check it out of curiosity. As they drove into the woods, the road eventually turned into an old dirt road. At the end of the road there was a really big house, so they stopped, and then a bunch of people came out. They were albinos. They decided it was probably best to go, but after they turned around and came around the first turn, a barricade made of random bricks and furniture had been put on the road. They looked back, and the albinos were all walking towards them holding crowbars and axes. He floored the car through the trees and made it around the barricade. The station nightclub fire. I know it's a video, but the sounds of it, unforgettable. Neither is the video for that matter. That's something that will never, ever leave my head. While I was in college, back in the late 90s, I started up a website on the college server, short stories, journaling, some fan pages for a couple bands I was into. Got pretty handy with Photoshop, which had only recently been out. I guess you could say it was a very early blog, before blog was coined. As I was writing, I came across another few sites from students doing the same thing. One had a particularly disturbing story, which may or may not belong in arthropophobia. He called it a stenocadia. I remember this clearly. It was a diary over several days of someone who had a minor skin infection, and the itching was driving him crazy. The author would detail the sensations of the blisters, and to his horror he began to see larvae crawling in these blisters. They burrowed into his skin, and the blisters spread over his body. Then the blisters began to pop, and insects began to emerge and crawl around on his body. It ended with him being unable to take it anymore, and shooting himself. It was written so descriptively, so thoroughly detailed, that it stuck with me, all these years later. To this day, I cannot for the life of me find this site, the author, or the story, anywhere, and I'm afraid I don't do it justice. The part in American Psycho when he connects a car battery to the woman's breasts. Skimmed the rest of that chapter, and by skimmed I mean I just went to the next one. The movie was a little much for me, and from the sounds of it the movie left out a lot of the book. I just don't like that kind of crap anymore. It messes with my heart. Well, it's probably not the most unnerving thing, but I admin home automation systems across Baltimore, and every single one of them went down late last night, so I did crap my pants today. And Gmail went down this morning, as did two of the bots in my favorite Ike channel. It's coming. When I first went to college I was majoring in criminal justice. This later changed for a variety of reasons. We heard a lot of stories from former and current police officers and other folks of various roles in the field. The story that stands out the most to me was about a car that hit a deer. Pretty typical, a car on a country highway here in Illinois hit a deer and it flipped up into the windshield. However, it was the backside of the deer that penetrated through the glass, and it was still very much alive after the fact. The deer, finding itself stuck, was frantically trying to escape from the vehicle windshield. As it was doing this it was kicking its legs trying to run away, resulting in the driver and passenger being stomped to death by deer hooves, trapped in their own car. When the rescue folks finally arrived the deer was still trying to escape, the people in the car already dead. That one really bugged me. I saw a secret postcard years ago that had a hand-drawn image of the Twin Towers burning and said everyone who knew me before 9/11 thinks I'm dead. There's this story about a woman that stands in the middle of a dirt road near my grandmother's house in the country. All she does is stand there, mostly at night, dressed in her wedding dress. A few of my relatives ran into her. Most just drove past her out of fear. My uncle stopped one time. He didn't get out of the car and had his car lights turn on the maximum level. He said that even though she was basically blinded because of the lights, she kept her eyes open and was staring directly at his own eyes. Needless to say, we're all scared of her, and it's not just a ghost story told to kids. We've had adult conversations about her and I can see the fear in my aunt's face every time she talks about her. I was in Prague when I was 18 for a post-high school graduation trip. A bunch of us were walking in a group. I was maybe a foot ahead of everyone else, and all of a sudden I get grabbed by my shirt and jerked backward. One of the road trolleys whooshed right by. I had seen it, but misjudged how close it would come to me. A friend grabbed me just in time. Like 2 hours later we're on a trolley and it stops unexpectedly. I look up to see someone on the sidewalk on their knees, covered in blood and sobbing violently. A trolley to our left is stopped and police have just arrived on the scene and placed a white sheet over a body hit by the trolley next to us. An arm was sticking out. I looked away and have been trying to erase the image ever since. My uncle told me a story about his friend who worked in a nature reserve. A black bear saw him and started to chase him. He fell headfirst down a small ravine. He was stuck upside down with his legs poking out, and the black bear just sat down and started munching his legs until his screams attracted another worker. Because he was upside down, the blood did not reach his legs and he did not pass out from the blood loss. He was awake through the whole thing. The movie Gremlins has this random plot twist where this pretty minor character, love interest of the main character, hates Christmas but won't tell anyone why, and then finally explains near the end that her dad died on Christmas from pretending to be Santa Claus and breaking his neck in the chimney. He was just missing until his wife and daughter lit a fire. It was completely unnecessary for the plot or the character. It was just this random piece of dark that left you with your mouth open not knowing whether to cry or be angry. There was a video on LiveLeak about a captured platoon of Russian soldiers that was about to be executed by Chechnyan rebels. I couldn't bear myself to watch it but there was a video description of it. Being curious, but too much of a pee to watch the video, I read in extreme details about how the Russian soldiers got their throats slit beheaded. First time in my life I could actually remember feeling immensely scared and frightened by some words I read on the internet. Some men would give anything to get that kind of crap out of their head, and yet people voluntarily watch it on the internet. Some things don't need to be seen. Nothing pee about that. Any and all audio of Jim Jones' paranoid rants to his congregation, especially from November 18, 1978, the day of the Johnstown massacre. Not the most unnerving thing, but definitely a candidate. Lay down your life with dignity. Don't lay down with tears and agony. There's nothing to death. It's just stepping over to another plane. Don't be this way. Stop this hysterics. This is not the way for people who are socialists or communists to die. No way for us to die. We must die with some dignity. We must die with some dignity. We will have no choice. Now we have some choice. Do you think they're gonna allow this to be done? Allow us to get by with this? You must be insane. Look children, it's just something to put you to rest. Oh, God. Children crying. Mother, 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 please. Mother, please. 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 Don't do this. Don't do this. Lay down your life with your child. But don't do this. Be right back. Gonna go throw up forever just from reading that. My friend once told me to think about this. You are about to brush your teeth. You start brushing and realize you grabbed a razor. So you put the razor down and grab your toothbrush. But the tub of toothpaste is full of spiders. Posted this here before but it's still up there weird wise. I come home from work one night to find my darling 2-year-old daughter standing at the top of the stairs staring up at the full moon in her jammies. Teddy bear in hand. She should have been in bed by this time. Not wanting to scare her, I walked up the stairs and asked her what she was thinking about. I was imagining she would say something childish like, "Is the moon really made of cheese, daddy?" Instead she turns to face me with a very serious look and in a very serious and creepy monotone voice says to me, "We are all in the same cage." 2 years old. I nearly died of fright. I literally recoiled from her and ran back down the stairs backwards. She said a few more things like that to me but it stopped after a while. Thank God. A girl I know, whom I thought was one of the most bad butt women I knew, just posted something from her journal a few years ago when she was in her abusive relationship. The pain and torture, both physically and mentally, that she described. Her though process while she was abused, it was pretty painful to read. Thankfully, she's out of that relationship and happy with who she is now. Read about how Comanche raiders used to cut off the soles of prisoners' feet and make them march behind the horses long distances. The most unnerving thing I've ever read still sticks to me this day over 10 years later. It was an article in Reader's Digest about a Holocaust survivor, and part of the story was how she was trying to imagine that the sacks the SS officers were throwing out the truck were just cats and dogs. Though she described the crying and yelling of babies and children, the descriptive paragraphs still hang in the back of my mind and the images pop up every now and then. So sad. I read somewhere here before about a group of guys who were on a holiday somewhere, India, and they went off and wandered away from the town. There, they meet a few cool monk shaman-like dudes who offer them weed or some other kind of smoke. Only one of the guys take up the offer, while the others politely decline. Later, they meet back up with the guy who left the group and he's totally shell-shocked. He can barely speak. All they could tell was that the weird shaman dudes took him off to where dead bodies were usually prepared for burning or burial. Nothing else. They reckon he saw the other men do something with the bodies. Something like cannibalism or necrophilia or both. Whatever he saw, it drove him completely insane. And he's never been the same since. Would be great if someone could link back to the original. My recollection isn't great, and I think I got some details wrong. Anyway, what was so unnerving about the story was that something as precious as our sanity can be completely destroyed just by witnessing something profane. Sounds like something from Lovecraft. This must have been back in 2002 or something when my street still had orange streetlights, so I would have been 7 or so. I was lying in my bed unable to sleep properly. I have no idea what time it was, but my parents were in bed too, so it must have been after 10. I heard this kid outside saying ma'am, 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 and the sound of a pram being rolled down the street. It went on for much longer than I thought, and I was just lying there thinking, please make your kid shut up. The kid didn't stop, so I leaned out of the bed and looked outside, just to see this toddler wandering about in the middle of the street, alone, outside my house, continuously saying ma'am, 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 ma'am. I watched him for a while and he just wandered off up the street eventually, still asking for his ma'am. Looking back, this was creepy as heck. I'm still in the same bedroom. Don't think I'm gonna sleep tonight after reminding myself of this. 2 arms and a head. A guy who attempted to do a motorcycle diary type trip through South America got as far as Mexico before hitting a donkey. He was left paraplegic and fell into depression. This book is his ranting at life and how it was worthless and unfair. The ending is his journal as he is committing suicide and watching himself bleed out. I'm really surprised at how unconcerned I am about this. I look at the wound, a big, gaping stab hole in my stomach, and it doesn't really bother me in the least. This was not what I expected, everyone. Maybe think of me when the time for you to die is coming and be reassured, because it's not so bad at all. In fact, it's not bad at all. The time leading up to it was what was horrible. As Nietzsche says, he who exults at the stake does not triumph over pain, but because of the fact that he does not feel pain where he expected it. A parable. I'm still feeling fine. Maybe I'm not bleeding enough. I just don't see how I could live indefinitely with a wound like that. I know the people I love are going to be so upset about this, but there is no need. Please, don't. I'm fine, and everything you should be feeling badly about is behind me now. All of my suffering is over, and it was horrible, nightmarish torture that I went through for the last year. It's okay now. I have no fear. It is only sadness because of everything I still wanted to do, but as I've said so many times, all of that was gone anyway. Part of what I wanted in desiring to die in the company of those I loved was to reassure them and perhaps give them courage to face death well. That was something I really wanted to give to them, and I'm sorry I can only do it with these words. I was driven almost mad by all of the things many other people said about paraplegia, suicide, and what was still possible in my condition. I hope everyone understands how all of that affected the tone of what I wrote. I was so frustrated with all of it. I thought it was so insane. But I only wanted to break free of it all and say what I felt. I felt like it stifled me so horribly. I cut some more and the blood is flowing well again. I'm surprised how long it is taking me to even feel anything. I thought I was dizzy, but I'm not sure I am now. It's 8:51 p.m. I thought I would get cold, but I'm not cold either. I'm actually hot, but that's probably the 2 sweaters. Starting to feel a little badly. Sweating. A little lightheaded. I'm going to go now. Done writing. Goodbye everyone. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.